The mirror doesn't lie. But in the 16th century, it was an accomplice to murder. A queen's face becomes a mask of flawless white, painted not with beauty, but with death. This is the court of Queen Elizabeth I, where perfection demanded a terrible sacrifice. Her iconic pale skin was the absolute standard of power, nobility, purity. But under the flickering candlelight, something was rotting beneath the surface. Women painted their faces day after day, layer upon layer, unknowingly sealing a silent killer into their pores. The skin decayed, the hair fell out, the body slowly shut down, all hidden behind a veil of elegance. A beauty standard that didn't just alter appearances, it consumed them, in a world where looking perfect mattered more than being alive. One question remains. How many women walked willingly into an early grave, believing they were touching grace? To understand the mask, we must first understand the world that demanded it. In Elizabethan England, appearance was never just appearance. It was a language, a silent system of power, class, and survival. Pale skin carried a meaning far beyond beauty. It signaled wealth. Laborers worked under the sun, their skin darkened, roughened, marked by the outdoors. But the elite lived behind walls, away from sunlight, preserving a pale complexion as a living symbol of separation. To be pale was to be untouchable, not just socially, but politically. By the late 1500s, this obsession morphed into something far more dangerous. Cosmetics became tools of identity, not decoration, but construction. Venetian Ceruse emerged as the ultimate solution. It promised perfection, a smooth porcelain finish that erased scars and the signs of aging. But the chemistry behind it was deadly. It was crafted from lead, mixed with harsh vinegar. It created a thick paste that bonded perfectly to the face. At first, the effect was miraculous. It covered everything. It reshaped identity. It made women appear untouched by time. But chemistry does not negotiate with desire. Layer by layer, the substance built up beneath that artificial glow. The damage began silently. The skin suffocated. Toxins seeped directly into the bloodstream. Physicians noted the symptoms: fatigue, hair thinning, unexplained illnesses. But the connection was rarely understood. Or worse, ignored. Because court life demanded absolute consistency. One flaw could mean lost favor. One sign of aging could mean political invisibility. Even royalty depended on these toxic mixtures, not out of ignorance, but because the system left them no alternative. Beauty was not optional. It was authority, made visible. And so, what began as a symbol of status transformed into a fatal dependency, a standard that rewarded the appearance of life while quietly destroying the body beneath it. For Queen Elizabeth I, that physical punishment became deeply personal. In the autumn of 1562, at 29 years old, she was struck by the most feared disease of her age: smallpox. The illness arrived suddenly: fever, pain, absolute isolation. And for several terrifying weeks, England faced the reality that its queen might die. Courtiers whispered outside closed doors. Foreign powers watched in the shadows. The future of the kingdom was suspended, caught between life and death. Elizabeth survived, but the disease left something behind, something she could not command, something she could not execute, something she could not negotiate with: her own reflection. Smallpox scarred its victims permanently. It left deep pits and marks across the skin. For ordinary people, it was a tragic consequence of survival. But for Elizabeth, it threatened something far greater: her image. Monarchs were carefully crafted symbols. Appearance was political power. Every portrait, every public appearance, every glimpse of the queen reinforced her absolute authority. A scarred queen was a vulnerable queen, and vulnerability was dangerous, especially for a woman ruling a world dominated by men. So, behind the heavy doors of the royal chambers, a dark transformation began. The white cosmetic was no longer just fashion. It became essential, not an accessory. a shield, not beauty, protection. By flickering candlelight, attendants prepared thick mixtures of Venetian Ceruse. The sharp scent of vinegar lingered in the air. Powders drifted like pale dust through the dim rooms. Each layer concealed the scars. Each layer restored the grand illusion. And each layer brought the poison closer to her blood. Imagine the scene. A dark chamber. A silent queen. Restless shadows dancing across stone walls. And in front of a mirror, a ruler studying a face that no longer matched the myth survived. The solution seemed perfect. The scars disappeared. The legendary pale complexion returned. Her portraits remained timeless. The myth survived. But every mask has a cost. With each new application, Elizabeth forged a bond with a deadly substance, a poison that would slowly consume the very face she was trying so desperately to preserve. The mask worked. For years, it protected the image of a queen untouched by time. But beneath that flawless white surface, the damage never stopped. Lead does not leave quietly. It accumulates. In the bones, in the organs, in the nervous system. And over time, the cost becomes impossible to hide. Historical records cannot diagnose Elizabeth with modern certainty. But the signs of severe lead poisoning were all there. The symptoms were chilling. Her hair became thin, fragile, impossible to conceal. In her later years, Elizabeth relied entirely on elaborate wigs, towering symbols of royal elegance, symbols that hid a painful, decaying reality. Then came the skin, the very thing she had sacrificed everything to preserve. Venetian Ceruse did not nourish the face, it devoured it. The toxic mixture dried the skin, it caused severe irritation, it deepened the very scars she sought to hide. To cover the new imperfections, she applied even more makeup, a fatal cycle, layer upon layer, concealing decay, with the exact substance creating it. The portraits remained beautiful, the woman behind them did not. As the decades passed, observers whispered of an aging queen, a woman whose physical reality was drastically different from the youthful myth celebrated across Europe. And the suffering was not just physical. Lead exposure attacks the mind. It destroys memory, mood, cognitive function. Stories from her final years describe a ruler who was exhausted, withdrawn, increasingly paranoid and haunted by her own mortality. Then, there is the darkest legend of her final days. According to accounts, Elizabeth could no longer bear the sight of her own reflection. She ordered all mirrors removed or covered entirely. Whether pure fact or historical myth, the story survives because it captures a terrifying truth. A queen who spent decades building an illusion had become trapped inside it. The poison had not merely altered her face, it had destroyed her. And in the deafening silence of her final years, the greatest enemy in the room was not disease, it was the reflection, waiting in the glass. In the end, the story of Queen Elizabeth's white makeup is not about cosmetics. It is about a bargain, a dark bargain between appearance and reality, between absolute power and the price required to keep it. For decades, the white mask created one of the most untouchable images in human history. It transformed a vulnerable woman into an immortal symbol, a queen into a living legend. But symbols demand a heavy cost, and sometimes, the very shield that protects us can quietly destroy us. Centuries have passed since Elizabeth's reign, yet the human obsession remains surprisingly unchanged. Today, the tools are different. The mirrors are brighter. The pressures arrive through cold screens instead of royal courts. But the desire to appear perfect still follows us. The desperation to hide our flaws, our fears, our true selves. The poison is no longer found in a jar of lead. It lives within an expectation that can never be fully satisfied. Perhaps that is why this history still haunts us. Not because of the makeup, not because of the crown, but because it reveals a terrifying truth: how far human beings are willing to go just to preserve an illusion. Imagine the final scene: an aging queen, a silent chamber, a candle burning low into the freezing night, and one last layer of toxic white powder carefully brushed across a face the world believed it knew. The mask remains. The legend survives. The woman slowly fades away. Was the price of absolute power worth the poison? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you dare to uncover the darker truths hidden behind history's greatest legends, subscribe. Join us for the next chapter. Because sometimes, the most dangerous secrets in history were always hiding in plain sight.